So, Slain Ethnic Alchnia, welcome to Khmer Voices, where we shine a spotlight on the achievements of the Cambodian diaspora around the world. I'm your host, Wani, aka Vanny. Today, I have on the show Savan Kong, aka Savan. He is the first ever customer experience officer for the United States Department of Defense. In this pioneering role, he led the Customer Experience Officer Portfolio Management Office. Sounds fancy, so what does that entail? Well, he championed the integration of customer experience principles into IT initiatives across the nation's largest employer. His leadership focused on improving the experiences of service members, civilians, and stakeholders by ensuring that technology solutions were functional, sustainable, scalable, secure, and mission ready. Now, of course, he goes into more detail in this episode, so keep listening. We covered themes of cultural identity, education, and the impact of privilege. He also reflected on his upbringing, which included attending a prestigious private school known for alumni such as Bill Gates and Paul Allen. Okay, you may be wondering, how did his parents, first-generation immigrants, a nanny and a sawyer, afford private school? A prestigious one, too. Well, you'll find out. And you'll also find out, how did someone who studied communications digital media end up working in technology for the United States Department of Defense? And now in his mid-40s, how is he exploring his cultural identity and celebrating his family's legacy? I had a great time getting to know Savan, and I think you will too. Enjoy the episode.
We came here in 81. I was born in 1980 in Khao, like a lot of people around my same age. And we were living in Linwood when we first arrived here, and we were sponsored through this Christian sort of community. Pretty much have grown up in America my whole life, right? And it's been sort of this wild ride where I've spent a majority of my life trying to get away from or, try to be more American. And now that I'm in my 40s with a family, I'm slowly trying to circle back and then learn more about what it means to be Khmer and what the community means to me and my family. So it's been a wild journey since we got here in 81.
Mm-hmm. So you were just a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you land in the U.S.?
We were in Linwood.
Mm-hmm. Where's that? Sorry, I'm not familiar.
Oh, it's sorry. It's North Seattle. It's
okay.
Sort of north of Seattle. And I grew up in South Seattle most of my life. We had a quick stint in Fresno, California, but for the most part, I was all over Seattle. Big Khmer population there, just
mm-hmm.
like in Lowell and Long Beach. Spent most of probably my 20s and even my 30s in the Pacific Northwest.
So you said that you wanted to be more American growing up, and there was a Cambodian community there. Were you part of the Cambodian community? Did you try to be part of the festivities and celebrations there?
I think begrudgingly so sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? As a kid, you sort of just want to go play with your friends and do the things. But, when you first immigrate here, that is the community that and that your parents know. And so, we did go to Wat a lot. We did go to all of our weddings that we went to were all Khmer weddings, right? That's all I really knew. And you sort of take it for granted as you start to be a lot more worldly and see more things. And, it was one of those things where I just was trying to find out who I was and what my identity was. And initially, the badge of being Cambodian, in that community is very, it is sort of second nature, right? You don't think about it because you're around people and you speak it and you eat the food and you go to the events. But, as I went to high school, and then eventually college and work, a lot of people didn't know like who Cambodians were sometimes, right? They didn't know our history. And so that got me thinking a lot about like, well, shit, how much do I even know about my own history, right?
Mm.
Like, how much do I even know about, the impact that, the genocide had on my family, and not just looking backwards, but also looking forwards. Like, what will that have on my daughter and my family and her family moving forward? So there's been a lot of introspection here over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So did you have Cambodian friends growing up then? What was life like going to school?
It was sort of weird. I did have Cambodian friends, although what's interesting to me is that most of my friends now, I have a wide variety of different types of friends, I would say. Most of my friends from high school that I've known the longest, most of them are Asian, different types of Asian. But the going back to sort of taking it for granted, like a lot of my cousins, where we grew up, I grew up in the projects as White Center, and we all went to the same sort of middle school, and my parents were very adamant about like getting an education and going and doing something with your life. And that's the reason that we came here, right? It's sort of that story that you get told. And that was ingrained in me like very early on. And I could see that a lot of my friends that were Khmer, a lot of them were going down like the wrong path. Like some of them
Mm-hmm.
were going to jail. They would get caught up in some sort of legal problems, or they just never left the community. And what's funny is that like in my late teens and 20s, I always told myself I never wanted to be stuck in that cycle of like, being in a place and knowing the same people that you grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird, like in my 40s now, just thinking about it, there's probably a part of me that was lost, like trying to escape sort of that vicious cycle and going to college and doing these things in life that I have not connected with that community as well as I would have liked. And life is long and it's a big journey. And so like going back now and just trying to understand it better has been a big part of what I'm trying to do, as I'm heading into my 50s now.
In your 50s, aren't you? You're not even mid
No,
40s yet.
heading into my 50s. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
45.
Okay.
I'm 45.
We're
I
around the
think I'm
same.
on like the other end of the other end of it, right? Like we're getting closer to
I
50 than we
suppose,
are
yeah,
to
because you
40.
said you were born in 80, right?
Hmm.
Okay. I was
Yeah,
born in
getting into
81. I'm
it.
like, I'm not 45 yet.
We're getting close.
Yeah,
We're getting
a lot of
close.
what you're saying is a reflection of how I feel right now too, and that's part of the reason why I started this podcast, is just to kind of explore how other people are feeling and figuring out like where the Cambodian community is. Like a lot of us are thriving, but then a
Yeah,
lot of us, are still struggling.
yeah.
In your teens and 20s, did you understand why your friends that you grew up with took a different path from you?
I would bucket. I would probably generalize the types of friends I had, and it's funny because a lot of this is top of mind for me because I'm finally sitting down and trying to write this memoir. I'm trying to sort of really internalize and understand what identity means, especially across multiple generations. And friendship is one of those core pieces that I've been really doing a lot of reflecting on because I think like the friends that I had in White Center and the friends that I had, say, like my first 2 years of high school, um, we all were, I would say, cut from the same cloth, right? We sort of came here around the same time. We had the same sort of like relatives that we all hung out with. We ate the same food. And so it was very easy to get to this place where you were just complacent about the types of things you did, or maybe the types of things you learned, or the types of books you read, or music you listened to. And the last 2 years of high school for me, I went to this school called Lakeside, and my mom was very, again, adamant about going to a good school. And Lakeside's it's a private school in North Seattle. It's highly competitive, and Bill Gates and Paul Allen went there. That's where sort of Microsoft was built. And so she sent me there. I was fortunate somehow to be able to get in, and you could see this drastically different world of the upper echelon of Seattle, right? And the kids and the parents there, and sort of the access to opportunities that was very different, very eye-opening for me. And it's like the first time that I could see the direct correlation between the types of people that you're around, the types of things that you would learn and sort of like take in, and how that could directly impact you as you're sort of getting into adulthood, right? And trying to really understand, like, what the hell is it that I want to do with my life?
Mm-hmm.
And so, your question about friends is interesting because, I think I've just been privileged to be like given these opportunities, these doors to walk through, where I think like a lot of people that I grew up with may not have had those things. And, sometimes you have to be aggressive about, knocking on those doors, but other times it's just a matter of like, walking through them as they're presented to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just fortunate enough, like growing up, that I had a few doors that I could walk through.
How did your parents manage to get you into a private school financially?
A lot of scholarships.
Okay.
Because at that time, my mom was a nanny,
Uh-huh.
and my dad is a sawyer. He cut and packed fish. And, we took out a couple loans. Lakeside at the same time, at that time, the tuition was the same as going to UW,
Wow.
University of Washington. And so, we're looking at, like, instead of 4 years for college, I'm looking at maybe 6 years because the tuition was about the same.
Mm-hmm.
But they did have really good scholarships that I got. I did end up, having to pay for some of that out of pocket. But a lot of the people that I've met that have sort of like opened these doors for me, like I was talking about, I've met like in high school. I've probably met more in high school than I did actually in college.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's one of those things where as a parent, you sort of have that sort of innate sense to invest in your kids, invest in your family, right? Because like once you invest in them, hopefully when they get older, you will be the ones helping to take care of them. Like right now, I live literally like a half mile from my parents, and they're in their 70s and 80s, and I'm there all the time, right? And so that's sort of like that familial Khmer mentality of, these tight-knit families and communities.
So when you entered this new world in private school, what was it like? You said it was eye-opening. Like, did you feel intimidated? Did you feel like you didn't belong? Did you fit in right away? Did you find your people there?
There was no other Khmer people there. Oh, there was one. There was one. There was a handful of minorities. And I have a pretty outgoing personality. Like my wife says that I never have a problem talking, which I don't. I like to communicate. That's sort of like built into me. So I didn't have an issue talking to other people, but there's always going to be that sense of, when you go and you see their houses, or you see the things that they're doing in terms of trips, and you see these things that you could never sort of imagine growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It does give you a different perspective of the types of access that they have that you don't have. And, one of the things I've struggled with as a young adult, and, even now, is that imposter syndrome, right? Like you sort of like want to get to that place and you want to be like those people. And you're trying to figure out and write down the playbook of what they're doing. It's because you want to do the same thing. But at the same time, you start to lose, maybe a sense of your own identity, trying to be like those other people. And so, like for me, the second half of high school was very much an interesting time because it was the first time where I was exposed to just this different universe that you just sort of saw on TV or, you maybe read about, but here I was like in this weird place, this campus that looks like, Dartmouth or something on the East Coast, and you're going there every day for school.
Yeah. And you obviously thrived there.
I did okay there.
Okay.
I did okay. Yeah. It's funny, like for the kids that go to Lakeside at the end of graduation, every month you get these books and they'll send it to you. And in the books is like, hey, here's all the stuff that's going on. And at the end of it, they will publish a list of all the names and all the colleges that you're going to. And so every year you sort of know which colleges that, your friends accepted or whatnot. And I just remember thinking like, what kind of crazy universe is it where you've got 5 people going to Harvard, another 5 going to Yale, and, all these things. And I'm just thinking about, my friends back in middle school or where I grew up, like you'd be lucky to have people going to University of Washington. Most people will probably go to a community college, or most people will go to work, right? Because they don't have, those, the ability to even, apply for colleges, let alone pay for them. And so, yeah, it was very interesting. It was very weird. And I'm glad I went through it, but I think in many ways, like, I don't know if I was completely ready for that experience, like considering my background and all those things.
Okay. Was there any sort of like, when you went to your peers' houses, how did you feel about that? Did you ever invite them over to your house?
I had a handful of Asian friends that I'm still friends with today. And we all just lived in the same neighborhood, right?
Okay.
Like all the Asian people sort of lived in South Seattle. And so we were always going to each other's houses. But one of the craziest stories was, we had one of our big dances. I can't remember if it was like prom or something like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. We're going to do it in the gym and it's going to be decorated and it's going to be nice. But we ended up having it at somebody's house. Like it fit the entire sort of like, 11th, 12th grade, covered up their pool. They had catering and all that stuff. I'm just like thinking, how the heck can you pull this off? Right. And it was nice. It was, it was in a very prestigious neighborhood that I had never even known about. And I grew up here, but it was so gated off and it was so separate that unless you were sort of privy to what that world looked like, you would never know that it was even there.
Yeah, it's this feeling of reconciling the two different worlds. I'm still struggling with that because we grew up poor and we lived in public housing, and now I live in, my husband does really well, and we're in we're in a private club, and I just can't. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm not actually there. I'm just like, is this my life?
Yeah.
Like I can't really, I do appreciate it, but sometimes I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is completely different from how I grew up. And like, how did I get here? Yeah. So I completely understand that feeling that you had back in like your last 2 years of high school. So did you know?
And I think, oh, sorry, Bonnie. I think like there's also, for people that are of our age, there's just this innate pressure too from, I don't know if you feel it from your parents or your family, but like there's that sort of built-in pressure to always strive to be exceptional or successful. I'll put that in quotes, successful at sort of whatever you're doing, and because there's a certain amount of pride there. And so I think for me, after my parents saw that world and they knew that it was possible, like there's always sort of that stress and that pressure of really sort of like making sure you're not letting your parents down, making sure you're not letting your family down. And that's that double-edged sword, right? Of people, of refugees, that have sort of like been able to take advantage of opportunities, whether it's through work or building your own business, and then constantly having to try to be successful because you've got that familial pressure. And I think it is sort of like that reconciliation, like you were talking about, that we struggle with. I know I personally struggle with it a lot, like just trying to, balance it out between that and maybe just being okay with not having to be the best, whatever it is that's out there, right? That's okay too.
So after high school, where did you go?
So after high school, so my mom almost killed me after high school. I'll tell you the story. So after high school, we had just spent all this money, right? Putting me through Lakeside. And during that time, I was interning at Microsoft as a high school student. And when I graduated, I went to Occidental. I'd got in there. I was going to be a writer. I was, studying American history or something like that. And in the summertime, I would come back and I would work at startups. And so there was one summer I remember after my freshman year, I was working at the startup, and it was doing well. They had just raised, $1 million. And I just thought that was the most wonderful thing. And they were like, Savan, we're going to give you the salary of $70,000. And, at that time I was 19, whatever. And I only had three things in my head that would make me successful, right? Like, I wanted to make as much money as my parents. I wanted to work in like a high rise, and I wanted to have a car. And that was it. Like, that to me was like the pinnacle of success. And this place, just by chance, was in the Columbia Tower, big building, right, in downtown Seattle. They were paying me $70,000, which at that time was more than both of my parents combined. And, there was a lot of talk during those days of, IPO, get rich overnight. And I was just thinking, like, this is my ticket. And so I told my mom, I was like, hey, Mom, like, here's the situation. These guys are paying me a lot. I can work on the internet. And, I'm going to drop out of college. And she was not happy about that. The thing about me that I've sort of like set a precedence with in my family is I've always been that rebel. Like my sisters are very docile. My brother, they're very obedient, a little bit more soft-spoken. And I've always been sort of that counter person. Like, I'm somewhat brash at times. I like to take risks. And, she was pretty upset by it. I don't think she understood the reasons why at that point. But, I was just like, this is something I'm going to do. And, at that point I had an apartment, and she said, okay, all right. Like, if that's what you want to do. And to this day, I don't even know how she agreed. Because like, if that was my daughter telling me that, I'd be like, there's no way in hell you're dropping out.
Well, I mean, your starting income was very good at that age too. So how did you get that job?
I think it was just like a Craigslist ad.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
You just applied to a Craigslist ad?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, this is like a Craigslist ad. And so, I dropped out, and, life has a funny way of teaching you lessons, right? 6 months later, they burned through all the money that they've raised. We didn't have any clients coming in, and the crash was literally around the corner. And so I was like, shoot, what am I going to do now? So I was like, hey, Mom, like, I need to move back in with you. And so I'd move back in, and I decided at that point, I was like, I think I'm just going to finish my college degree. And so I moved back in with my parents, finished my degree at UW. Mm-hmm. But it's a life.
What did you study there?
Digital communication, mm-hmm. And I had a minor in English.
Okay.
So I did a lot of writing and a lot of talking and listening.
And did you put that to use after university? What did you do afterwards?
Not really. At least I don't think I did. But in hindsight, I probably put more of that to use than I realized. So, after UW, I found I had to pay off this big debt that I just accumulated with college, right? And so I went back to Craigslist, the tried and true source, and
For
found
those
an ad.
for those in their 20s, I don't know if Craigslist still exists.
I don't know. I haven't been on it in a while. You tell
Yeah.
me.
I don't know. I don't know if anyone uses that. So for anyone listening, Google Craigslist, and it's basically just like an online classifieds
Yeah.
where people used to go look for jobs. It's what I guess Facebook Marketplace would be equivalent to that because you could sell stuff on there too. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Anyways, yeah, finish it. Go on with your story.
Yeah. There's also some seedy things on Craigslist, so don't go too far. But so I went back on Craigslist, gonna look for another job, and actually serendipitously, I connected with a friend of mine. His name is David, and he had pitched me this thing about a website he's trying to build. It was called Redfin, and he's like, "I've got this server, I've got this GIS data, and I've got these parcels of images, and what I want to do is stitch this stuff together, and I want to make it so that you can look down on a map and see which houses are being sold." And I was like, "Sure, good, good enough of an idea as any." And so,
how do you know David?
I went to Craigslist.
Okay,
it was Craigslist and cold calls. Like, in my 20s, I was unabashedly a hustler. I would call people. I would send emails.
Where do you think you got that from?
Probably my mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. My dad's very quiet. He's very docile. If he's mad, he's mad. My mom, I feel like she's mad like 90% of the time, but she's probably only mad like 10% of the time.
She's a passionate lady. That's where you got it from. Okay, so David gave you this job at Redfin.
Yep. So, I mean, long story short, the Redfin stories could last, a whole nother podcast. But, long story short, I ended up working with him, and a good thing I stayed at home was because he couldn't afford to pay me consistently. But at that time, I was like, all right, he's a fun guy. We're building some great things. And so, did the whole Redfin thing. We went through a ton of ups and downs. We raised a bunch of money, and, long story short, Redfin's pretty successful now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my second foray into working and the tech scene. But that really opened the door for me, at least, to understand the tech side, but also the business side of things. Like, how does financing work? All those things.
Okay, so you're basically in the technology sector, and you didn't go to school for that. So just to let listeners know, you don't have to stick to whatever it is that you studied. Life has a way of setting you on the right path when you are determined to do whatever it is that you want to do. So I looked at your LinkedIn, and you've done a lot. Could you give us a summary of your resume? So Redfin.
Maybe, I could definitely do that. Maybe go backwards here. I'll just maybe hit on the wave tops of things. So most recently, I was the first customer experience officer for the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense is the largest employer in the world, and so we run a massive organization. So I was running all of customer experience for the entire department, Army, Air Force, Navy, yada yada. And I spent about a year and a half doing that, and I've just recently left. But before that, I spent time working for DDS, Defense Digital Service, and they were a SWAT team of nerds that gets deployed if there's a crisis, if something bad is happening. Think about like the healthcare.gov collapse or something like that, right? Where there's like a system that gets compromised or something's happening. And we were a, ragtag group of people from industry that were experts in specific fields that would serve the country in term limits. So at that, for me, it was 4 years. And we reported directly to the Secretary of Defense at that time. And so these were like high profile, projects that we'd work on. But that was my first foray into federal government. I'd never sort of worked, in that before, because I'd spent most of my time I spent, a couple of years at Amazon on the Kindle content team. I spent about 5 years making medical software better for a place called Cario. And then I had a couple startups that didn't go as well.
Okay.
But yeah, most of my time spent in industry.
So I can understand how you made the transition from Redfin to Amazon in the private sector. How did you transition into the public sector?
So another friend of mine, his name's Chris, he'd called me. This is right after the Redfin IPO. And we moved back and I was just on a sabbatical. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I just bought a house. I'm watching YouTube videos on how to patch up drywall and, all those things. I'm not like that handy of a guy, unfortunately." So he said, you need to get off your ass and come help, serve your country because we've got all these things that are happening. And we need your expertise. And, at that point, it was actually, what's funny about your question, Navani, is that I'm actually at that chapter in my memoir where I'm writing it. I'm trying to sort of like pull together these different conversations. But what was interesting about that decision for me at that point was two things. I remember in the back of my head, my parents saying, "We didn't come to America so you can go fight another war," right? Which is why I never signed up to be in the military. So that was the first sort of objection. And then my wife, she said, "Hey, like, I don't want you to go to Afghanistan," because we were sort of deep, in that when I first signed up for DDS. And so I was like, I had these very big objections, but there is also a piece of me that really thinks service to a greater cause is important, especially if you're a little bit older, right? Maybe in your 20s, you could sort of focus on building, your nest egg and your family. But I feel like as we get older, the impact to doing things that are bigger than you, whether that's through a local community or federal government or volunteering, I think is a noble cause. And so for me, that was my way of saying, okay, I've got these skill sets and I want to give back. How do I do that? And so, I talked to my parents, I talked to my wife and told the kids. And long story short, I ended up taking the job. And, 6 months later, I ended up going to Afghanistan for the first time. And my wife wasn't happy about that. But, it was just sort of part of the job and what was needed. And we went anywhere in the world that needed us. And that was just happened to be one of the hot spots, right?
Mm. And then your most recent role, how did you get that position?
A good friend of mine, his name's John. He was he had worked as the director for the CIA, or one of the directors. I can't remember his exact title, but then he ended up getting a presidential appointee position as a CIO for the Department of Defense, which is, I would argue, the CIO is probably the most influential person in IT in the world. Like our IT budget, our defense budget alone is in the trillions. The IT budget alone is in the hundreds of billions, right? So like there's a massive amount of influence those people have. And, there was a lot of talk in Congress, and there was a lot of talk in industry about sort of the lack of focus of user experience in the department and the need to have somebody shepherd that. And so he and I talked and long story short, we created sort of this CXO role, and I helped stand up the office and put together their framework for it. And, a lot of what I'm doing now is more like policy writing, strategy, less technology than I did before. But I think that's okay because it just means that I'm growing as a professional, right? Like learning new things.
Mm-hmm. So you said that it's done now. You've left that role. What are you up to now?
I'm going back to patching up drywall, and I don't know yet.
Uh-huh.
It's funny. I think I'm taking my time and just seeing what's out there and focusing a lot on writing this memoir. I've had
Mm-hmm.
great conversations with people, and I think that's probably my biggest focus right now. In addition to, a few a few advisory gigs, but um, it the art of writing and the practice of writing has been very therapeutic for me,
Mm-hmm.
especially considering I actually didn't want to leave the role I was in. It sort of just materialized based on new administration, all these things that's happening, which I
Mm-hmm.
won't get into here. But yeah, I've been focusing on writing the memoir. The great thing about and I've listened to a couple of your other guests, especially some of the writers, the poets and stuff, and I'm trying to sort of like understand sort of the psychology around why they do it and their craft and how they get to where they are. And it's interesting because like I never thought I was a writer, but now that I'm actually sitting down and going through it, I'm like, shoot, you know what? Like this actually could be a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not horrible at it, and I'm getting all these benefits. Like I've learned so much about my parents that they never talked about because I never sat down. I never specifically asked them those questions,
So I want to know
and
more
it's
about this
been
journey of,
amazing.
sorry, I interrupted there. I want to expand on this journey of yours. When
Okay.
you said that there's a lot of things that you are learning about your parents as a result of you trying to write this memoir, did you have
Mhm.
conversations with them before about their time during the genocide and even pre-genocide?
Yeah, growing up, we never talked about it. Um, my mom my mom would always bring up the fact that we were lucky
Mm-hmm.
and that we escaped it. So I knew, sort of generally speaking, what she was talking about. But we had never sat down, like, over a dinner table and really sort of hash out the details. And especially my dad, because he doesn't voluntarily tell you things unless you specifically ask him things.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is that over the last 10 years, I see these stacks of notebooks and just, on the side of his bed. And he's just been silently writing all this stuff in Khmer. And I'm like, Dad, like, I'm not going to be able to read any of that, right? So I've got to like figure out how to get somebody to translate his story because he doesn't really talk about it. But I think the way he's communicating it is through writing, which to me is very powerful because I never knew that he actually wanted to even communicate that in any way. And so, I think part of it's probably um, some PTSD
Mm-hmm.
around the experience. Part of it is just not knowing how to say it in the right way where you're giving it enough um, color around the actual impact that it had, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want to just sort of gloss over some of the details. And so
Would
I
you
think that's part of it.
Are you interested in learning to read Khmer?
I think at some point I will. I gave it a try
Uh-huh.
a little while ago, but it's one of those things, and this is part of my personality too. Like I'm a very when I start something and if I enjoy it, like it sort of consumes me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it's like a Zelda game, I'll log 500 hours, or writing. Like I used to run a lot. I ran like marathons. Then one
Uh-huh.
day I said, I'm not running anymore, and I just quit. Right? Like so, I would like to learn more how to speak more eloquently, how to write better, how to read it. But I also know that like if I start down that journey, some other things will have to fall off. So
Mm-hmm.
it's always been like not the most important thing, but I know that I'm not getting any younger either. So
Yeah.
there's
I
that.
I've been thinking about that a lot because I want to start asking my parents questions too, but their English is limited. And also, being someone who speaks multiple languages, I know that there are certain ways to say things in
Yeah.
a language that can't be expressed in English. So
Yep.
that is a goal of mine, and I think you can pick up some more nuances as well when your parents are communicating in their native language, right?
Yep.
Because they're going to have to kind of find the right words in English, and they may not have those words in their
Yep.
vocabulary.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And when my dad tells his story, it's always partly in Khmer and then partly in English.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my job to try to take in that information and then try to give it the amount of respect it deserves in the form of writing. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been the hardest part about this so
Mm-hmm.
far is, how much of that am I missing? How much of that am I capturing authentically? How much of that is maybe just my interpretation of it that
Mm-hmm.
may or may not be right? And so that's been definitely a struggle so far.
Yeah. Do you have like a goal date to finish this draft?
Before I die at some point.
Or before your parents pass away? You never know what's
Yes,
going to happen.
I know. And that was the big thing for me too. It's funny, Bunny, your daughter and my daughter, they're about the same age. And when I started writing this thing about a couple weeks ago, I showed Samantha and I said, "Hey, I'm writing this thing. This is going to be, a story about the three generations, your grandparents, your Kong and Ma, and then me, and then you." And she actually was interested in reading it. She's read it, every single draft of it. And so, I think even if I don't end up publishing this thing, I just think that the art of that style of communication between different generations, because my parents have read it or had somebody read it to them and my daughter's read it, I think that is so powerful and I never knew that it was even going to be a thing when I started down this road.
Does your daughter speak Khmer?
Oh no. But I tell my mom, I'm like, you got to just speak to her. And she's like, she doesn't listen to me.
Yeah, my daughter just ignores my parents. She doesn't. She's like, what did she say? What did they say?
Yeah, they'll get along just fine then.
Aw. So when you were growing up, who did you look up to?
Who did I look up to? A lot of the tech giants at the time.
Uh-huh.
I listened to a lot of hip hop growing up. I listened to a lot of rap. So, there was a part of me, and this goes back to one of your first questions was, it's sort of that lifestyle that sort of is thrust upon us, the sort of rich, glamorous, Jay-Z, right, type lifestyle. And so I looked up to the hip hop artists. I looked up to, Bill Gates and, not as much Jeff Bezos because Amazon wasn't that as big as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, those are the people. I read a ton of their memoirs and biographies, and just to try to understand the psychology of how they got to where they are.
But did you identify with what they faced?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. But, it's funny because I don't think I even had a desire to identify with people on that level at that time in my life. Right.
You just wanted to see how they got there.
Yeah. I wanted to, in all honesty, the amount of grit that I had back then, was not that good. It's the words are eluding me of sort of what I felt at that time, but I just wanted that easy button a lot of times, right? I wanted to be okay, that's where they are. How do I sort of hit the easy button and get there, and not sort of put in the amount of grit that something is needed to really persevere through that. And it also made the challenge behind something like that is it sort of puts these blinders on your eyes where you don't sort of look beyond the purview of that person or persons, right? You're sort of in the zone of what they're doing. And so I didn't sort of look outside of that community for at least 10 years, maybe 15 years. I was sort of locked in on that lifestyle and that dream.
Mm.
And, it's a double-edged sword for sure.
Who is there anyone now that inspires you?
I think it's a body of people. I don't think it's any one person. I'm exceptionally inspired by people that are doing great things in the Khmer community now, like Khmer Renaissance, Death in Cambodia, your podcast. I feel like there's a lot that is here now that wasn't here even 10 years ago, that has given access to these stories of people that I would never have heard about or seen or have done. So I think there's, just from a sort of Khmer perspective, I think that is very inspiring. I also think that there are people that are doing exceptionally good things in politics that I won't go into here specifically, but I think like right now we're sort of on this pendulum swing, pretty far to the right. I think before we're pretty far to the left. I think something in between that with sort of the right shepherding of individuals. I think that's inspiring for me as well. But, I'm open to a lot of things now that I wasn't before, just because I am okay. Finally, like in my 40s, I'm okay, like saying I don't know what I want to do in 5 years. I don't know sort of like who I want to be in 5 years, and be okay with that, like that's fine.
Well, you have a plethora of experience to draw from. So I think you're at that position in life where you can say that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's absolutely true as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you said you used to run. What else do you do for fun?
Oh man. So yeah, I ran a lot, and I ran mostly just to get away. That's my only time to think. So I ran a lot. During COVID, I played a lot of disc golf. And so I was out playing disc golf.
I think it was a big thing during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Because of
huge.
The distancing that you can have in that game.
Yeah. So I did a lot of that. I probably spent, my nephew and I, we'd probably spend, 3 to 5 hours playing disc golf. My wife absolutely hates it when I pick up new hobbies because I'm never home. Like when I'd run, I'd be gone for 5 hours. Disc golf is 5 hours. I actually, for the last year and a half, I've been going to the gym a lot now, at Planet Fitness. And so they know me there, which I feel good about. So I've been going to the gym a lot, and I just felt like I just felt one day I woke up and I was like, just feeling very weak, and feeble. And so I just said, I'm too young to be feeling weak and feeble. And so I'm like, okay, let's go to the gym. Oh, and read and read and write. I think the art of writing has excited me over the last couple of weeks.
Nice.
And that's a big thing.
Nice. Yeah, I hope you finish your memoir soon. Just so that
it has been. I
know you've released little snippets of it.
Yeah. What did you think?
I didn't read the whole thing. I saw that you posted on your on your LinkedIn, and I didn't click on the link. I just read how your father said that you had to change the name, and I think I commented on that too because that really resonated with me. Yeah, because I think everyone's got a story about not using your real name.
Yeah. It's funny too, these themes that when I sat down and started writing it, I didn't know what the themes were going to be, but they've sort of naturally just bubbled up, like the idea of names, the idea of community. Like I talk a lot about community, and identity is a big one. But yeah, I think the art of writing has been exceptionally therapeutic, especially now that I don't have a full-time job.
So I did sign up for your newsletter, but I don't think I've gotten anything.
Oh, no, I've been lazy.
Okay, because I think that's after that, because it was based on that post, and I signed up for your newsletter there, so I don't think I read anything. And I didn't read what you had sent me via email yet.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm actually going to try something somewhat experimental where I'm going to try to release snippets of what I'm writing. It might not be done, but just sort of organically build a base of people that may be interested in it. And then I'll just send that out over time. But I was fortunate enough to connect with a friend who connected me with another friend that was a literary agent. And I was just trying to understand that world more. Like, what does it look like to to publish something? What am I getting myself into?
Yeah.
And it sounds like I'm getting myself into a lot if I'm really trying to be committed to it.
Yeah, it's really hard to I don't know. I'm not well versed in that hemisphere, but I know that if you self-publish, you're not going to get into bookstores because bookstores
Yep.
don't take self-published authors. So you're stuck on
Yep.
like Amazon. But just they also want like a certain story too, right? So you're limited in
Yep.
that regard.
Yeah. It's a weird world that I never thought I would be learning that much about, but here I am, right? Like add it to the other, 6 industries that I've had to learn about over my whole life.
I would just want to go and talk about your advice to your younger self.
Okay.
So you write, quote, "Don't be afraid to take up space. You belong in every room you walk into, even if no one looks like you. The path won't always be clear, but keep moving forward with integrity, curiosity, and heart. Trust that your lived experience, growing up in a tight-knit immigrant community, watching your parents survive with quiet strength, navigating spaces where you often felt like the only one, isn't a disadvantage. It's your superpower. Let it guide how you lead, how you build, and how you serve." So, question about the superpower part. How do you make it into a superpower?
That's a great question. I think I'm also still trying to learn what that looks like as well. The reason why I chose this as the advice to my younger self is when I was growing up, I felt like I blended in too much, right? You're just sort of one of many Cambodian kids that our parents brought around and just shoved you in a corner and said, play. And you sort of like were one of many, right?
Okay.
And then as I got older, I became one of the only Asians, let alone a Cambodian person in, in a top secret facility clearance in the Pentagon, right? And so they're just you're sort of pushed off to the side, and many times the reason why people actually don't speak up or they don't feel confident in what they bring to the table is because you may feel like you don't belong there, or you may feel like you're an outcast, or you may feel like you're just the token person there because they needed to have an Asian person or whatever, right? Fill in the slot. But all of the mentors that I've had over my life have always told me that you were called here for a reason. They wanted you here for what you bring to the table. And so, feel confident that you are there to contribute meaningfully, and you're wanted there, and that there is a reason, whether you attribute that to God or fate or whatever, you're not where you are just by accident. Right. And I'm a big believer in like fate and sort of like, being put in these positions so that you can have these voices and be able to contribute in meaningful ways. And so whether you feel like you're one of 100,000 or you feel like you're the only one, don't feel like you're alone, or don't feel like you can't speak up because of that feeling, right?
When you started working in like a predominantly white institutions, did you have to explain a lot where
Oh
Cambodia
yeah.
is?
Oh yeah. It's funny. I work predominantly with men, especially in the tech field and especially in the DoD. A lot of men. I didn't have to explain where Khmer is too much to the middle-aged men that may have served in Vietnam or may have had their parents serve because they sort of knew it. But I'll tell you, growing up, just being around people that were our age, you would have to explain it to them because they didn't sort of have the context in school of the Vietnam War and the killing fields, but they also didn't sort of have the teachings, whether it's in a classroom or online, to understand sort of like the history of Cambodia. And that was actually one of the biggest pieces of advice I got from a lot of my friends that were non-Cambodian that read the memoir. They were like, you need to put more context and history into this thing so that people know what it's about. And I always thought that that would be, when I initially started sitting down and writing it, I thought that was going to be
A given.
maybe just a given thing, right? Like people sort of knew about it, but they don't. And so, yeah, I'm learning new things every day.
Yeah, you know what? I am ashamed to say this because I do have some Lao friends, but I had no idea. I knew Lao people came to North America around the same time that Cambodians and Vietnamese did, but I didn't know like why they came. Like for us, it was the Khmer Rouge. For
Yeah.
Vietnamese, it was the Vietnam War. But for Laos, I was like, I knew they had some sort of war, but I didn't know the details behind it. And I didn't know that they were so heavily bombed and it was also connected to the Vietnam War. Like I felt so ignorant. Nobody knows about the Khmer Rouge genocide either. Like they have an idea of what happened, but they don't know the history leading up to it, the events leading up to it. And growing up, I was telling my brother-in-law, I was like, yeah, I was ashamed that that our people killed our own people, but I didn't understand. I just didn't understand why that would happen. But now, you know, in my 40s, when I start digging into it, I'm like, oh my God, I feel just like my eyes have been opened, and I just felt so ashamed of feeling ashamed.
No, I feel that way. I've felt that way so many times. And to your point, Mani, I think the history of things and the reason why, like, you know, it's important for us to tell these narratives and the stories. I didn't know that about Lao either. And, you know, for me, a lot of it is trying to tell our story so that we don't repeat those same mistakes, like Khmer people killing other Khmer people. Like we think that stuff like that could never, ever, ever happen again. But, you know, within the memoir, I frame, you know, us coming to America from Khmer. But at the tail end of that, I actually worked on Operation Allies Refuge, which was evacuating Afghanistan. Right. And I was in war rooms. I was sort of doing this coordination of the evacuation of an entire country. And you could see the same mistakes being made, right? The same sort of like amount of turmoil that we're causing. And unlike before, where I was on sort of the in Sorkhmai and coming here, I'm now the person sort of like sitting behind the desk and sort of like trying to orchestrate these things for other families that are trying to come here. And just that repetition of history in many ways. And in all honesty, the hubris of like us as human beings in America sometimes to think that we can't repeat history. It's just so crazy to me. So that's, you know, another reason why I'm writing what I'm writing is so that we can tell these stories and get that narrative out there.
Yeah, we need to be talking about this more because you're right. I'm seeing a lot of what happened to us being repeated.
Yeah.
So you know what? I want to talk about one other thing about your advice here. It says, slow down sometimes. You don't have to prove your worth every second. You already have it. It sounds like you're taking that advice.
I'm trying to.
Yeah.
I'm not good at taking my own advice. If you talk to my family, they'll probably tell you the same thing, right? And the art of slowing down for me, the act of it, it's so painful. And I don't know if this is just my personality, but, you know, my wife tells me all the time, she's like, you can't even take a bath, right? Because you're like, you go in there, you like try to scrub and then like you try to leave. And
you're trying to multitask while you're there, cleaning the tub at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. So I have a hard time slowing down. I have a hard time not doing something. And I think if I were to slow down more or become intentional of it, at least, I would actually start to realize or enjoy more of the things that are out there. Right. and understand what that looks like.
Well, you're going to the gym now. That was time carved out for yourself. And
Yep.
do you enjoy
slowly happening?
Yeah. Do you do a lot of outdoor activities, especially having grown up in Washington State?
Yeah. We go skiing, hiking.
Mm-hmm.
I don't run as much, but camping, all those things.
Is there lots of? Are you in Washington D.C. now?
I'm in Washington.
Oh, you're in okay, Washington State.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought
I'm
you
2
were
hours south.
Okay. Oh, cool. For some reason, I thought you were on the East Coast. Okay.
Yeah, everybody does. But
were you always
that's all I've done.
Even when you were the CXO?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would just fly there for a couple of days and fly back home.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 6-hour commute each way.
Okay.
7 hours.
Very cool. All right. I think we're almost at an hour now. And the last thing I like to ask guests is what are one or two things that you'd like listeners to take away from your story?
Oh gosh. I would say just give yourself grace, right? Give yourself that ability to make mistakes. Give yourself the ability and put together an environment to be able to slow down and give yourself grace. Like, don't be so hard on yourself, right? Like, I think like even for me, that's something I struggle with. And I talk a lot about it with my therapist. And it's hard to do for certain people, especially if you're sort of with our history and if you're tuned a certain way, it's hard to give yourself that grace. But I hopefully they can take that away from our conversation.
All right. Well, if people want to connect with you, are you open to connecting with them?
Absolutely. I'll talk to anybody and everybody.
Yeah. So find you on LinkedIn and Instagram?
LinkedIn, Instagram, and then at savankong.com.
Thank you, Mang Savan, for sharing your story with us and what you're now up to after all you've accomplished. Is it just me, or am I attracting these people? But I'm seeing sort of a rebirth of those around my age, in our 40s, I mean, as we assimilated so well into Western culture and now are rediscovering our identity, our cultural identity, and understanding the history of our people and heritage. If you're around my age, do you feel that way too? Do you see sort of a renaissance, a rebirth? I'm honored to have met you, Savan. I'm really enjoying the excerpts you're releasing on your site, and it looks like many others are too based on your LinkedIn activity. If you do ever release a book, you've got my support. And you know what? I'm happy to know many of us are creating and sharing our art, irrespective of the medium. It truly is therapeutic. Go check out the show notes on where you can connect with Savan and read some of his writing. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others you think would like it too. Akuntaran for listening, and if you haven't yet, please give Khmer Voices a 5-star rating. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and my guest is another podcaster.